Hello and welcome back to this week's video. Welcome in if you're new. Today we're going to be closing my kitchen for the night together. This is a little bit of a shorter video, but I thought that today we would try having a voiceover for the entire video rather than me just popping in randomly to say what I'm doing, and we'd see how that goes. This is a little bit of a change for me, as I usually start every clean with the sink and the dishes, but I'd done some dishes in the sink earlier on in the day, so I thought the best place for me to start tonight was with the drinks mat. I decided to try and challenge myself to get the whole kitchen closed down for the night before our drinks went cold, so it made more sense to clean the mat and then make the drinks first, rather than trying to clean around the drinks afterwards for this little challenge. I had been trying to implement these quick closing shift cleans at the end of the night recently, but it's been a lot harder than I thought because the baby gets a lot clingier at night. She's cutting another tooth through at the moment and she's been extra needy because of it. Of course, we do still have the dinner dishes to do, so I filled up the sink with hot soapy water and gave the draining board a quick wipe down whilst the kettle was boiling. It's always best for me to try and get little things done in the few minutes of waiting for other things that I have throughout the day, or else everything takes me so much longer than it needs to. Because of my ADHD, I have terrible time management skills and basically no sense of time, so I can basically never estimate how long anything takes me to do. Setting timers helps, but it's not perfect because I tend to just mute them without thinking once they go off, and then I completely lose track of how much time has passed during the task. I really struggle with implementing routines to keep on top of everything. I can have all the best intentions, spend weeks planning exactly what needs to be done when, and still fail within a few days, because once the first step is done, my brain considers the task to be complete and pushes it all aside mentally. It's why I hate cyclical tasks like dishes and laundry, because they're never done. Yet my subconscious brain decides that they're done after once and I shouldn't have to do them again, which then creates even more friction to keeping on top of it. The dishes have always been the main pain point for me when it comes to housework. I've never liked doing them, and when me and my husband moved in together, I did tell him that I would never be the one doing the dishes regularly. I was absolutely adamant that I would never ever be the default dishwasher. And then I got really unwell during my last pregnancy, and he took over basically everything. Once I was able to, I decided to take over what I could to take some of the load off of his plate. After weighing up the pros and cons, I took the dishes rather than doing the cooking every day. And even though sometimes we do end up trading off one, or one of us ends up doing both, it does work for us for the most part. I do think it drives him crazy when I don't get around to doing them straight away, but I have very fluctuating energy levels at the best of times, so I work with what my body tells me is okay to do without ending up in pain the next day. And of course, rather typically, right after I've gotten some routines into place to try and help me keep it all up, we all get sick and end up down for the count, as you can probably hear from my voice, so a massive deep cleaning video is coming soon. I've gotten through the bits I find the hardest, being the cutlery and the cheese grater, so from here the rest of the dishes is going to be smooth sailing, just bowls and pans really. It's astounding to me just how many dishes there are every day. I know that we're the ones using them, but the stack at the end of the evening always feels shocking, like someone else has snuck in and added a bunch more dishes onto the pile. All of these dishes are just from bolognese and my daughter finishing off the trifle I made for her dessert. She's lactose intolerant, so I try to make her vegan versions of normal things. I'm not personally a fan of the vegan custard I used for this one, as it smelled and tasted exactly like Play-Doh to me and to my husband, but she seemed to enjoy it, so that makes it a win. Just a second ago, I got fed up with the sponge falling apart in my hands and got out a fresh one. I swear I used to get a whole week before the scouring side was gone, but now it feels like I'm only getting 2 or 3 days. We barely ever had to buy sponges before, and now I'm constantly buying them, and that's even after swapping to the branded ones instead of the cheapest ones we could find. I would love to swap out to a more eco-friendly option, but I'm yet to find anything that suits our needs. Whatever we need still has to be reasonably affordable, because we aren't made of money. But honestly, it makes me feel so gross when I think about all the microplastics from these sponges falling apart being all over the dishes that we eat off, and how often we're throwing these out as well, because as far as I'm aware, they aren't made from anything recyclable at the curbside. I know you can't see very well because of all the dishes stacked up in the way, but now I'm cleaning out the tea and sugar jars. The tea one in particular needed it desperately, and I was basically all the way through the sugar in the sugar jar, so I just poured that little bit of sugar left into a bowl so I could clean them out. This is something that doesn't get done nearly as often as I think it should, because we always just top them up when they're empty, and cleaning them doesn't cross my mind until I get brown hands from the tea dust every time I grab a tea bag out. I just washed them and the lids and popped them onto a tea towel folded up on the counter, as there was no room left on the draining rack for them, but I was determined to get them done. Once those are done, I will just wipe down the sides and start to dry and put everything that I've washed away. I would love to replace our tea and sugar jars at some point. The jars themselves are great solid glass ones that I like, but the lids are so flimsy feeling and have little rust spots on the tops of them. They also have like plastic threading to screw them on. that seems to be glued into a thin metal lid, and they both look like they have rust trapped between the plastic band and the metal, and I really just don't like the way that looks, or the thought of rust flakes being so close to things that we consume every day. But for now they'll be fine. They aren't actively flaking into anything, and aside from the way they look, they are perfect. I think if I could just find different lids for the same jars, I'd be fine with keeping the existing ones, because like I said, I like the jars themselves. Here I noticed some cheese still on the grater and grabbed out a toothpick to scrape it out. And then I realised that the little rubber feet on each side of the grater are actually removable, so I used the toothpick to help me remove them and clean all around where they were. This is a pretty new cheese grater, so we've only used it a few times, but it was definitely good to figure out how to get those bits clean, because I was convinced the rubber feet were glued in, and that I'd have to scrape around them every time I saw cheese stuck there. I really need to declutter some of the stuff in this kitchen. I can just about fit everything we have now because we've come up with some weird ways to store things around the room, but I think we need to get rid of like half the stuff in here, or at least move the stuff we don't ever use to be in a box or something. Like just then you saw me put my oldest daughter's cutlery into a holder on the countertop instead of in the drawer, because when the baby started food we couldn't fit both kids' cutlery into the drawer together, and the drawer's overflowing with all kinds of stuff that probably doesn't even need to be in there. I want to get all of the cupboards and drawers sorted through, because even just looking in most of them overwhelms me, but again, with that overwhelm it's hard to know where to even start. When we first put everything in these drawers and cupboards, they all made sense and they were so well organised, but as time went on, things kept getting moved around and they ended up being in this state. I am just now realising how much of my cleaning is just doing the dishes. I'm so sorry if this is boring to watch. I'm going to try and change it up a little for the next video, but since recording this, like I said, I've been poorly, so I haven't really had the chance to do anything. We did actually pare down a lot of what we had, so we literally just had enough for one day's worth of dishes so that we would have no excuse not to do them after every use. And then my husband lost his grandma and he got all of her kitchen equipment, none of which he is willing to let go of, and we haven't successfully managed to go through any of it and take it out of the kitchen to stop it from taking up prime real estate and making the kitchen harder to keep on top of. Ideally, nothing would be out on the sides and everything would have a place inside a cupboard somewhere instead of just being everywhere. I'll get there one day, just need to buckle down and do it, put the things away in boxes. The last little bit of the dishes now is to get those jars dry. Getting them dry enough to have the tea bags and sugar in them again is a little bit of a pain, but once it's done, it's done. These lids trap water behind the plastic bit, which is why it's rusting in those areas and just adds to why I want to replace them. But we're making do for now, at least until I can look and see if buying new lids is possible. Once I'm finished with those, I'll chuck the tea towels into the washing machine, then I'll fill the jars back up. I did try to film that bit of restocking, but I did not do a good job at getting it in frame, so maybe next time. Next, I'm gonna empty that little dehumidifier that we have on the counter. This is the second time today I've emptied it. It wasn't full this time, but I felt better about having it emptied afterwards. Now queuing up a load of laundry to start in the morning. I was doing this clean around 11 PM, so I set it up with an 8-hour timer so it would be ready to put in the dryer when my husband was doing the morning school run. As always, got to clean the hob. I got a new multi-purpose cleaner which smells amazing. It's the Method Deep House Clean one. I did have a little bit of washing up liquid on the sponge as well because I wanted to see the bubbles, but it works pretty well on its own as far as I've seen. I also do this little bit of countertop and the backsplash every time I do the hob as it gets messy fast. And that white bit of wall next to the hob that I do as well as the side of the oven, it's built into a cabinet next to the hob, which I love because that means that there's no bending over when you're cooking or cleaning the oven out. I was just wiping off the soap with a damp cloth, and whilst doing this I noticed some little bits on the hob that looked like they were burnt on, so I grabbed my little scraper and I gave it all a once over. Wasn't anywhere near as satisfying as it is when there's a big spill, but I do really like doing this job. It might actually be my favourite cleaning task out of all of them. It's easy, it's not super messy to do, it gives a nice uniform finish pretty much every time. I don't like taking it apart to dry it off, but I've tried just leaving it before, and I'd rather do it than have to change out a rusty blade in the scraper. Once I'm done with that, I've got to give that counter another wipe as my tripod was in the way. Lovely bit of shaky hand recording there without the tripod. Now I'm just going to finish off with cleaning the table and around where the baby sits. She had some vegan whipped cream off of my oldest's trifle and she got it absolutely everywhere. So I had to wipe down the radiator and the fridge behind the chair as well as the chair itself. I really need to take this chair into the bathroom and give it a good scrub down in the shower, honestly. Might do that in the next video, to be honest. I did actually manage to finish all of this before my drink went completely cold. It was definitely not hot, but it was not an unpleasantly cool temperature. In a second, you might notice I'm finishing without doing the floor, and that's because I was thirsty and I wanted that coffee. It's nowhere near perfect, but it's so much better than how it would be if I was putting it off every evening. I feel a lot better at the end of these little resets because I know it makes it easier to continue to keep on top of it. And of course, the final step in a kitchen closing clean is lighting a candle. I hope you all enjoyed this week's video. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you again next week.